Hello, America. Last night, we only got through, I think, what we had planned for the first 10 minutes of the program. But there is so much going on, and this is very important, that I want to take you through all of this carefully and slowly. I don't know if we're going to make it to the end of this program tonight either, but we will give it our best shot. What I want to try to show you is what I said to you on the very first show that I did here at Fox News, and that is the problem with the news is they look at individual stories and no one ties it all together. And I know that immediately makes you into somebody with a tinfoil hat. Or does it? Or does it? I want you to listen carefully, please, and DVR this show, and remember what I tell you. I will be held responsible. Believe me, nobody's going to forget the things that I said if I'm wrong. I need you to remember the things that I said if I am right. I told you yesterday the perfect storm theory is something I have been studying and talking about for about 7 years. It is a theory that the world will have so many different pressures on it. Events and pressures and wars and everything else that we have all dealt with over the course of our lifetime, but never all at the same time. And the result could be catastrophic global collapse. I believe that we are headed in that direction. If I'm wrong, crucify me more than you already do. ABC's Good Morning America did an investigative report today, and they aired a clip of a critic that said I was gloom and doom. Oh, am I a bummer? I'm sorry. Then they played me. Well, you just have to watch. Watch. This is what they used yesterday.
His trademark blackboard filled with conspiracy theories. Even last night, his show was filled with visions of impending global doom.
I believe we're heading into deep and treacherous waters. What gloom and doom? That's crazy. Treacherous waters ahead? Damn the torpedoes, Captain. Keep the Titanic at full speed. What are we, crazy? What could possibly make a man say such a rash and reactionary comment like we're headed in deep and treacherous waters? Could it be the global financial crisis? Oh, I know. How about the food prices that are rising at everybody's grocery stores all around the world? How about inflation? Or could it be the violent uprisings in the Middle East that everybody said was going to be great, and now it's just cascading and setting the whole Middle East on fire? Strangely, all around all the oil wells. Don't worry about that. There's always plenty of oil. We've got some here. Of course, we're not drilling for it anymore, but don't worry about it. Could it be the radical hardline Islam grabbing power in the Middle East and teaming up with socialists now in Europe? Proof. How about that? How about the natural disasters? You know, Japan just had another big earthquake today. Geez, what was I thinking? Man, I'm such a downer. I don't know how I saw any of the gloom and doom. I want you, because you watch this show every night, and you know me, to not take away the gloom and doom. That's not the message I'm trying to give you. I started doing this show for a reason. To try to stop the cascading. I remember I was on the radio 3 years ago and I said, gang, get off of the highway. Get off of the highway. We're passing all of the exits. We've had many exits. I don't believe there are exits left. What's coming is going to be bad. Our reaction to it is what turns us off or not. All I'm trying to do is to prepare you so you can be a shelter for others, so you can help. Because a lot of people had been listening to these dopes on all these other channels saying it's not a problem. And all they will do, I promise you this, remember these words. When these things come to pass, all they will do is point fingers. It doesn't matter whose fault. At that point, it doesn't matter. What matters is, how does it end? Where do you go from there? Yesterday, I showed this board to you because there's a few things that have happened and have come to my attention, and they are things that I have been looking for and warning against for a while. And they were happening not here. This was one of them. But one of them was here, and one of them is here. Tonight, I want to start here in Japan. The crisis in Japan, remember, the idea is that the world will be under so much pressure, it will not be able to stand. The system will be overloaded. It's like those nuclear power plants. You could say, a guy who was on television saying, hey, if we have a 9 on the Richter scale, those things could crack open. They weren't designed to carry that load. Oh, the crazy guy. Well, you had one. So now, are we going to stand around and point the finger, or are we going to figure out how to fix it? All the TV cameras were all in, strangely, all in Japan, and that for that 1 week, man, everybody was concerned about the Japanese people. Now, to hell it seems with the Japanese people, to hell it seems with the nuclear reactor. I don't see a lot of reporting from Japan. It was wall-to-wall coverage for a week. Well, today they had another 7.1. Now, the reason why I bring it up is because just a few months back, the IMF came out with a report. We told you about it on this program. It was before the massive earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan. The report listed Japan as one of the 10 countries that could not financially survive anything devastating to their economy, whether it be man-made or natural. Well, then they had the earthquake. Remember, the IMF comes out with a report. It cannot withstand it. Biggest earthquake, I think, recorded, right? Well, so now what does Japan do? Well, Japan has to come up with some money to be able to help their people, so they start inflating their money. They just start printing money just to cover the cost of things. They had to evacuate. People had to get back to work. What are they going to do? Well, how long does that last? Well, our central bankers knew, well, that can't last long. So what did the central banks do? The central banks all over the world decided, we're going to help. And we're going to hold down the rate of inflation by printing money all over the globe. So now we're inflating all of the money all over the globe. Let me ask you, how long does that last? You're already feeling the effects of just the United States inflating their money all around the globe. This is just one event that has already put people out of work in Louisiana. How does an earthquake affect Louisiana? Because we're one global order already. Because they can't get parts from Japan to make things. This is one of the pressures that we showed you that are helping build up the perfect storm. And it is money pressures. And the money pressure, Japan is on the brink. That's what they'll tell you now. It's on the brink. But wait a minute. I read the IMF report. They were on the brink before the first earthquake. So do we believe that the IMF is telling us the truth now? Or was the IMF telling us the truth then? Which do you believe? Which is more prudent to believe? This one event has rippled across the ocean here. And it's rippling across the entire planet. That's one event. But these things are happening elsewhere. Do you remember when we told you last summer that the IMF again said Spain and Portugal, if they fall apart, it will cascade and push other Euro nations all over the edge. Do you remember that? Spain has 19% unemployment now, thanks to the green jobs, and Portugal is getting bailed out again. And now they're only on the brink, and nobody is talking about what they said would happen last year. So what's it going to take to push them over? And once Europe's financial crisis spread, well then, will you see bank failures and government failures? And will you see more inflation or less inflation? This is the question that I want you to ask yourself. The events of the world, do not read them the way the papers and the television shows want you to read things, that it's an isolated incident. It is not. It is not. It is not coordinated, but they are additional problems. Look, if you're struggling at home and you're about to lose your house, and all of a sudden your car breaks down, is that the mortgage company conspiring against you? No. No. But now you have the car that you have to pay for, and you don't have the money for your house. Things compile. You have to ask yourself, with the news of the day, are we headed in a direction that is more stable or less stable? That rise in inflation leads to a rise of the cost of basic necessities all around the world. Necessities like food. A food crisis which is already being felt all around the globe. People's grocery bills. Do I need to tell you this? How much are you paying for your groceries? Do you remember when the same people who are telling you that I'm gloomy, doomy now, do you remember what they said to you when I said last year, prepare? This spring, I said, inflation would begin to kick in and you would have problems at the grocery store. Do you remember that? Well, why is inflation happening? Well, there's several factors. High energy prices. Why is there high energy prices? Well, we're not drilling. We have the Middle East on fire. Has anybody noticed that the fires that they're setting, the revolutions are happening around the oil fields? And nobody seems to care. I don't hear anybody even talking about that. Meanwhile, America is burning her food for fuel. Something I talked about probably 5 years ago. I said we are going to be remembered as a suicidal people, burning our own food for fuel. And we're not alone. China is burning 98% of the world's cassava chips to make biofuel. Cassava is the third largest source of carbohydrates for meals in the world. Third, 98% burned in cars. Suicidal? Smart? In a time of a food crisis, does it make it more stable or less stable? The price has doubled since 2008 because it's being burned for fuel. And while we're at food, do you remember when I told you about Cass Sunstein pushing for more regulation on food, making it more and more difficult, making it more difficult on farmers, on producers? It would drive the cost of food up. Do you remember that episode? Well, now try this one on for size. Cass Sunstein and the FDA are now questioning the rights, this will blow your mind, the rights of families to, quote, produce and obtain and consume the foods of their choice. They go on to say, quote, there is no deeply rooted historical tradition of unfettered access to foods of all kinds. To the contrary, society's long history of food regulation stretches back to the dietary laws of biblical times. So now we have Cass Sunstein and the radicals in Washington actually quoting the Bible and suddenly finding Moses important. I can't write this stuff. So we have people struggling to get food, struggling to heat their home or cool their home because energy prices, what is it the president said, will necessarily skyrocket, or fill their cars up with gas. It makes people vulnerable to any kind of instability. Our own citizens are destroying our infrastructure, collapsing our banks, redesigning the globe, crippling our energy. The left is uniting with Islamists. The DOJ, have you heard anything from the arrests with the DOJ? Is anybody following up on that one? We have the left and Islamic radicals busted for working together. Someone should tell Good Morning America to stop investigating me and my situation of how what my future is going to be, and maybe start investigating on what the hell is happening in our world. I'm sorry, is that too gloom and doom for Good Morning America? The president said yesterday that he understands. He remembers what it's like to pump his own gas. Well, how big of you, Mr. President? The message was clear. Get used to it. So let's put this piece of the puzzle together here. You're going to have people struggling for food, not just here, but all over the world. We are behind the curve. Food, fuel, jobs, their money that they've worked their whole life for. What you have in your bank account is worth less and less every single day because we are inflating the money. They are stealing it from you. And it's happening all over the globe. It's not just us. Does that make a country more or less stable? You tell me. Now, imagine that there are people, whether it be for money or religious reasons or for power or political reasons, whatever it is, maybe some of them are just nuts. People are intentionally pushing the world over the edge. They're taking the crisis. I mean, I wanted to point out to Good Morning America today, that really, I wanted to point these things out to you and use Good Morning America as an example. Because when these things happen, I want you to clearly remember the people who told you, the same people who told you, don't worry about Fannie and Freddie. Don't worry about illegal aliens signing up for loans that they can't afford. Don't worry about Van Jones, a 9/11 truther in the White House. He's not there. Don't worry about Obamacare. It's going to make things better and easier for your doctor. Don't worry about raising the debt. Don't worry about shutting down the Gulf oil. Don't worry about Jeremiah Wright. He didn't even listen to his preacher. Don't worry about closing Gitmo. Don't worry. He's not divisive. He's not in bed with the unions. Special interests. Nothing's going to come of GE. What? Don't worry. Those same people that told you those things then are the same exact people who are telling you today, don't worry. Don't worry. These things won't happen. I pray every night that they are right. But if they are wrong, hear me now. Please remember these words. If they are wrong, don't worry. With God and values and principles and the Constitution and each other, if we stick to what has gotten us this far and we stick together, we will be fine. It will be tough because one of the other pressures that is building in this perfect storm is political unrest. People putting things together. Who could possibly be putting any kind of architecture in? Political unrest. We go there next. I want to put these, thanks Aaron, I want to put the world in some boxes here, and this actually should go over here. But this is what I want you to watch. I want you to watch the world in boxes, because sometimes it's really hard to follow what's going on. I mean, we talked about food shortage, oil. I don't think that would affect anything if that would happen. Natural disasters, inflation, debt, political unrest. But there's also a couple of other things. And when you start to see the cascading effect of what I talked to you about, the cascading effect that was happening here. Oh man, is John Stewart, John, what are you going to do? Seriously, when I leave, what are you going to do? Who's going to give you this material? You know how crazy this looks? You're going to miss me, John. This is cascaded, and I told you it would. When Tunisia happened, I said on the 31st of January, Tunisia, it's the Archduke Ferdinand, and it will cascade. This is cascading and it's on fire. When things start to cascade elsewhere, in this region or these two, you're in trouble. You have the pressure And I want to show you, this is cascading in this direction. And it's going to go this way. And this is radical Islam, and it's being aided here. Flip this. It's being aided by radical Islam here. This is driven by radical Islam. It's being aided by radical Islam up in Europe. It's being driven by the anarchists and the communists. Aided, driven, aided. I'm sorry, driven, aided. This is where you will always get involved, because once it starts affecting you and your life, you are neither of these activist radicals. This is what gets you involved. Trouble with food, money, heat, jobs. And that's what they're counting on. This is going to spread from France, and it is going to spread in both directions as well. This is going to spread up, and I will show you how. And it is already spreading. These guys, the radicals, are already spreading. There will be more that come from this direction, up here, and it will spread. And once it does, the question is, how much weight can be put on the table before it collapses? Radical Islam. I think you're already seeing radical and hardline Islam spread into West Africa, Asia, Spain, Greece, Turkey. Watch Turkey. All of that influence is going to go up. You couple that unrest with the anarchist, and it spreads further. Russia is already having trouble again with Islam. Russia is hardline enough and nasty enough to just crush or kill anybody who gets in their way. England won't have that luxury. England is going to be trouble. You combine all of these activists with people actually struggling with food and basic necessities and more unrest. The radical Islamists are not the only ones trying to capitalize on the crisis. In Central America, you have the communists and anarchist groups operating there. We already know that Hollywood favorite Hugo Chavez is a full-fledged socialist. He is a dictator. Top U.S. military commander now. Have you heard this? And when you do, ask yourself, why have I not heard it before? Top U.S. military commander is now warning the government to pay close attention to Iran's increased visits to Venezuela. Iranian visits to embassies in Central America has doubled since 2005. Meanwhile, Chavez's government has confiscated the industry, one right after another: oil, media, food, you name it. Meanwhile, in Brazil, they have just elected a militant Marxist president. Have you heard that? If you watch this show, you did. Nobody seems to mind that she was a guerrilla combatant, a communist, who in the 1970s was in prison. No big deal, right? But now there are reports that Hezbollah is in South America. Remember, Hezbollah is Iranian, and we have found several handbooks now on our own border. Communists are now active in Mexico. So you have Hezbollah and communists and drug cartels. Here they are protesting. Oh, they're protesting. Oh, wait, oh, that is so amazing. That's a labor union. In another part of Mexico, and this is the story that, to me, and it will seem like a very small thing to you, but I'm telling you, if it's not this, it's going to be something like this. A popular Mexican poet lost his son in a drug cartel moment of violence. This is having him now. He is a sympathetic figure. And I don't mean to say anything about him because I don't know anything about him, except some of his ideas. He is now trying to bring the cartels and the police together to agree to stop the violence. People are begging, see that sign? Begging for anyone to bring peace. How many times have I told you that that would happen? When people got desperate enough, they don't care who will bring them peace. He is saying, let's just make a deal with the drug cartels. So, all of these things are down below our border. We're not paying any attention, and they start to head up north. You have the beginnings of unrest here in America. We are far, far behind the rest of the world, and that is the good news if we wake up. In Wisconsin, they are now comparing their battle to what MLK did. I'm just trying to get my arms around this. Can you imagine if I would say anything like that? He died fighting to make people, to make sure that people could be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. In Wisconsin, they're fighting to have somebody negotiate their salaries for them. I can't imagine anything more insulting than that. But it allows us to argue politics and not what's really happening. Is the global trend headed towards more unrest or less unrest? And the more unrest, the easier it is for someone to stand up and be the strong man, because people will beg, please just make it stop. Well, George Soros, who, bring it on, George, bring it on. George Soros, who has done his best just to be a philanthropist, old spooky dude. He's already admitted, in his own words, he has a God complex. And he likes to dabble in revolutions. Well, how amazing. He is holding 2 separate conferences. 2. He's holding Bretton Woods 3. Look up Bretton Woods 1 and 2 and see what they did. See how important. Here's George Soros now saying he can hold Bretton Woods 3. What is the motive of this? Quote, to establish new international rules and a grand bargain that rearranges the entire financial order. Well, I hope we all like it. Thank you, George. May I have another? The other conference that he is holding is, ready? The National Conference for Media Reform. And the slogan of the meeting is, Real Issues versus AstroTurf, confronting the Koch brothers. Oh, you're not going to believe this one when I show it to you. No, even if you watch this show every night, you won't believe this one when I show it to you. And again, ask yourself, why aren't other people showing this to you? I studied Orson Welles. I'm a big fan of his. He taught me everything I need to know that is good, never give up, and everything that is bad, sometimes give up. He went after, what's his name, William Randolph Hearst with Citizen Kane, and it destroyed him. I'm sorry, George, you're not my rosebud. George Soros is, I think, an evil dude. Evil dude. I get so frustrated with him because, for instance, I just saw on the Time most influential people in the world, the 100 most influential people or something, this website thing. It means nothing because it's a vote, but I think I'm like number 5, or that's what it was around noon. I was number 5 most. You know who's not even on the list? Not even a candidate. Time magazine didn't even think George Soros should even be on the list. So now he's up doing Bretton Woods 3 to restructure our global finance, all of the rules, but he's not influential at all, and the media. Now here he is. He's going after AstroTurf and billionaire activists. You want to talk about the pot calling the kettle black? It's like the whole pot community. George Soros is upset about fake grassroots. So he's holding a conference that is being hosted by the George Soros-funded Free Press, attended by the George Soros-funded Color for Change, the George Soros-funded Center for Media Justice, the George Soros-funded Common Cause, the George Soros Media Access Project, the George Soros-funded Sunlight Foundation. That one makes me laugh every time. The George Soros-funded Think Progress, the George Soros-funded Campus Progress, the George Soros-funded New America Foundation, and a fellow at the George Soros Open Society Institute, Dean Starkman. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Honestly, it looks like he is now just taking pictures of our chalkboards and holding conventions. That's all it is. You can't make this stuff up. And he's complaining about the fake grassroots. It's being held in the Social Justice and Movement Building. Other attendees include Democracy Now!, The Nation, Nancy Pelosi, Socialist U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders, FCC commissioners, this should bother you, Mignon Clyburn, Jane Clyburn's daughter, and Michael Copps. Hundreds of others are in attendance. Invitation only. Have you know, invitation only. So at least there is no one of any influence going to any of this or anything. There's no one pushing or shaping. Or is it that no one will show you? My problem is neither of those. My problem is this. Where are the leaders anywhere in the world? Where is Winston Churchill? Where is anyone standing up for freedom? You know why they're talking about the Koch brothers all the time? Koch brothers look like romper room compared to Soros and the Tides Foundation. They're talking about the Koch brothers because they need to intimidate anyone with any kind of money or any kind of voice and say, sit down. They want control. All of these people just want control. It doesn't matter. You could be talking about Ahmadinejad. He doesn't agree with George Soros. Ahmadinejad wants control, and so does George Soros, for entirely different reasons. They're not working together. It's just that the world is up for grabs. And they'll control. He'll say he's controlling because it's for your own good. You need to be regulated. And we have once again become complacent with freedom. We have forgotten how quickly freedom can be snatched away. Do you remember what you felt like on 9/11? Do you remember being driven? You might not have picked up a Bible in I don't know how many years. I was one of them. And we all realized, oh my gosh, this could be over like that. It's 10 years later, and it's September 10th, 2001 all over again. And this time, it's the whole world up for grabs. It's a tinderbox. And even our religions are upside down. Watch yourself. Somebody wrote me, and I can't remember. What was the name, Joe, of that organization in Ohio that's going from church to church? Do you remember? I can't remember. I'll show it to you probably tomorrow, Monday, I think. They're going to Ohio, funded by this guy. Ronald Reagan did not sit down when he was told, don't tell him to tear down the wall, don't call him an evil empire. He didn't sit down. He called evil by its name, and he spoke it and said, do it. Winston Churchill did not sit down when he lost everything. They practically threw him out of the building because he said, the Germans are building an army against us. Well, gang, there is evil at our front door. It is in our house. They're in our living room. We're sitting there looking at them. We're talking to them. And everyone is saying, sit down. An army is being built, whether it be a global army of finance, food, energy, jobs, real weapons, religion. You must not sit down. Because just like there was another earthquake today in Japan, there will be another earthquake, a tipping point, whether manufactured or real, and it will push our world over the edge. I believe that moment could begin next month in Israel. That is when the flotilla sets sail. Whether it is next month or not, it is coming. You're already seeing the edges of it here in America, the seeds of anti-Semitism. Well, Soros's people call me an anti-Semite. Let me show you what it looks like. A pipe bomb in Santa Monica today. Whether it is earthquakes by God or by man, batten down the hatches, remain standing, and build lifeboats for others, because others will join.
Tapped into breaking news starting at 6 a.m. Get the stories impacting our nation and our nation's capital. Weekend starting at 6 a.m. Don't miss a minute of Fox and Friends.
I want to show you something exciting. It's exciting. I like to call it Gog and Magog time on the Glenn Beck program. I want to show you some new alliances that if I would have told you this, and in fact I think I did, but if I would have told you that the world was going to start to line up with Iran, you would say that, oh, right. Remember, this is the pariah of the world. But I want to show you some new alliances, and one you should be quite concerned about. The first one we have is Iran and Turkey. Remember, Turkey is a NATO member. March 30th, 2011, Foreign Minister says he wants to turn over a new leaf with Iran. Well, who doesn't? This past Tuesday, the Foreign Minister said that he's been invited to visit Tehran and that he is planning to accept the invitation at some point. Remember, Iran, this is Iran and Egypt? Or, okay, that's Egypt. Iran thinks that we are the great Satan. Russia and Iran. This one is really important because Russia and Iran, this has never happened. This alliance is a little spooky. After 2009 Russian-Iranian elections, Russia's deputy foreign minister said, "We welcome the Iranian president on Russian soil and see it as symbolic that he made his first visit to Russia. This allows hope for progress in all bilateral relations." Iran is Russia's biggest trading partner in the Middle East. Russia helped Iran build their nuclear power station last summer. And then we go to Turkey, which is the third player that you don't want to miss. I'm going to post all this information online at glennbeck.com, and I'm not going to give you all the details. I was just going over it here in the break, and it's just easier for me to post this information at glennbeck.com, and you read it for yourself. Let me just explain this to you. Iran and Russia. Russia's building the nuclear power plants and huge trading partners. Egypt and Iran. That's Sunni Shia. These two do not get along. They're now buddy-buddy, and it's getting more and more cozy. Russia and China and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is so upset with us right now and our president that Saudi Arabia is negotiating a deal with China for their oil. What do you think is going to happen with that one? And these three are really critical. Nobody ever thought these countries could come together and form any kind of alliance. The reason I say nobody ever thought it is because people have been looking for these three to bring an alliance together for thousands of years. Well, since the book of Revelation said that Gog and Magog would come together. This is the alliance of Gog and Magog. Does that mean anything? I don't know. But let me ask you this. Do these countries seem friendly to the United States? Are these countries aligning themselves together, make our world, our Western way of life, more stable or less stable? Do they lead to higher gas prices, lower gas prices? More people killed, less people killed? More freedom or less freedom? Less corruption or more corruption? That's all I'm asking you to do on this program, is just look at things objectively. Stop listening to the clowns who have told you things like Fannie and Freddie is going to be fine. And start listening to your gut. Do your own homework. Back in a minute. Tomorrow is a very important show I don't want you to miss. It's time to take a stand for our friends in Israel. And then next week, actually, I think tomorrow, I'm going on comedy tour all across the country. Find out all the information at glennbeck.com. I'd love to see it. From New York, good night, America.